Hey everybody, welcome to the Kuadrant community call of October 22nd, 2024. We have one issue on the one topic with many sub topics and one demo, which is great. And is there anything else? No, I don't think so. Let's get started. You want to kick it off, Alex?
Yeah. So we had said that we would focus on getting the APIs ready for this release. Tomorrow's release, because tomorrow's release is N-1 to V1. So I tried to list here all the stuff that still needs to happen. If I forget anything, please add to this list. And yeah, so maybe I'll stop there already. Anybody seeing anything missing here? Is the stuff that's listed there even making sense?
Yeah, I think that's very high level, right? So for sure we can refine each one of those bullet points there, or most of them. And I'm sure there are issues that we will one way or another, ended up associated with any of those bullet points. I'm thinking still things we have to do as part of the state of the board reconciliation refactoring that are not necessarily listed there, right? For example, we have the part of policy discoverability to tackle yet. There's some work we want to do on error handling. So there are a couple of things that we definitely want to do, except that they are not as important or as big as the one that you are listing there, which I guess are more like facing than anything else. Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Do those tasks actually impact the external API though?
Yeah, it's a good point. It depends how we want to tackle them, right? The error handling one, it's probably not. But the one that I mentioned before on discoverability, it really depends how far we want to go with it, right? Currently, what we do is we just add one super high-level summary on the status of the target resources regarding whether they're being affected by a given kind of policy or not, right? And at most, we list the names of the policies there. Arguably, that is not enough to provide some decent information about what's going on, right? I particularly happen to think that in an HP route, for example, you want some more details than that, right? You want yeah.
I think that's fine, right? Like, do we expect to keep what's there? If we expect to keep what's there, then what we're planning is an enhancement to what's there and not breaking the API. So we can still move to the V1 API, enhance it after the fact with this new work, but still get our V1 API in place.
I suppose, yeah. At the same time, it depends on the level of commitment we want to give on what we call V1, right? Even if we change a minor thing such as how we craft a message in the status, right? And by the time we release V1, users might be already, let's imagine that we have users, right? Actual users isn't in production. They might already start building stuff based on that given way we crafted those messages, right? If, I don't know, 2 weeks after that, we realized that we want a different kind of message, to provide some more refined information to the user, then effectively we are breaking the API, even if we do not change the CRD itself, if we do not change, the structure of that. So that is my point, right? What is user facing? What is API?
Yeah. But I think we need to be some way pragmatic about it at this phase. We don't have like a massive user base that's currently coding against those APIs. And while I would certainly applaud the idea of being as strict as possible and trying to follow the right policies to get the right stuff in place longer term, I think right now we're not in that place. And I'm not sure we need, I think a certain amount of pragmatism is reasonable at this stage. And getting to a point where the spec of the APIs at least is locked in and ready to be tested by QE, for instance, is valuable at this point, because I kind of want as much time of that baking in before we get to the end of the line as possible. Does that make sense?
I guess it does. Although at the same time, I don't want to drag this too long, right? But at the same time, if what you said is true, then what's even the point of calling this view one, right? So we do not have users. We call this view one, and then we're allowed to break this because we do not have users. So what does it even mean calling this view one?
Right.
In my head, it's view one if you commit not to touch it anymore.
Well, touch it is, I don't think that's
Not to change it anymore.
Not to break it. I mean, you can still add to it. But I see it's a subtle, there's subtleties there. I get that. But I think Alex wrote this message with that in mind. Like, are there any things that would completely break somebody's, like he wrote a policy and that policy is just not going to work? Like breaking API stuff that we really want to get in 1.0, right, Alex?
Let me put this differently. In my opinion, view one means it's stable.
Right. Okay. Let me interject here. Like, there is a thing here that you could argue is not related to this necessarily, but we're looking at 4 weeks, right? So you need to get this stable in 4 weeks. That's what you have. So now let's rephrasing the question again. So on the status thing, right? By the way, I think anything that relies on the message here is flawed to begin with.
Yeah.
And should be addressed differently, which is, I think, good in this case, because this means, yeah, provide a somewhat message that is somewhat informful to someone reading it. But then if you want to start building automation around those things, we would need to provide proper error or status in that case, I guess, handling mechanism. I'm not sure how to call this better, but prototyping effectively is what I'm thinking about.
Like, I think we could say like the reason and the type and the status could be said to be fairly stable, but like the message, I mean, I'm not sure. Yeah, I kind of agree. I'm not sure we need to actually fully lock that down.
Sorry, I already regret having brought one particular example. Please, let's not focus on the example, but rather on the general rule. The general rule is we're still touching those APIs a lot. That's the point. And we keep finding stuff there, right? So, for example, just this morning, I realized that we need to change the structure of one specific field in the old policy, right? Only because we cannot really accommodate the merge strategy without doing that, and yet, prepare ourselves for providing enough information for the user later on. So this will continue to happen in the upcoming weeks. That is my point.
Yeah. Okay. But back again then to the fact that we are on a time schedule. It won't be perfect. We could say that we could admit to that, and like we will try to get the most of those things, changed and fixed before.
Right.
But still, at the same time, it will be good to have something already, like by tomorrow, like a pre-thing that can go the whole circle with QE, for example, and even more things could be found, which we actually want. The more eyes we have on it, the better. No, I would say at this moment.
Right, because I said V1 here, but if you all remember, the idea was to have again n-1. So it looks like it's V1 beta 3 for both auth, and though it's unclear for me rate limiting what's going on there, but whatever, right? That. So it's not like no changes should go in, especially for the status stuff. Like, that's one where I'm like, okay, whatever. The other stuff, like indeed for merging and other things, is more annoying. Like I have a question with regards to that in the cell into Autorino as well. So thanks, Kevin, for rerunning the test and proving that I had left it there for it to fail, because I was like, we need an answer to that question, but I never asked the question. So yeah, again, right? That's the, so I should maybe rephrase this. And what do we still want to get into V1 beta 3, 4, whatever? That's supposed to go out tomorrow. Let's all agree it won't happen. But so what is it that we want to get in ASAP to be able to enable what Craig said, right? So that people can, so that it becomes usable. It could be buggy, but usable, like you can code to it, you can write test cases to it and so forth. And then you have the remainder of the time there to make it better if needs be, which may include, again, breaking changes for when we get to V1 in technically 3.5 weeks from now.
Yeah, the one item I would like to add to V1 Beta 3 as soon as possible is the one I highlighted there in the document. And I'm working on it. So making the alt policy equal to the rate limit policy, which was merged this morning.
And just to get an idea, and maybe you have no answer, would that be one of the bigger things in this list of things? I don't know what the status is of all those.
No, I think cell is much bigger.
Right. And should we come to an estimate here, or is that
No.
too much to
No.
ask?
No. It was all required for yesterday, so who cares about the estimate? I think what we have there is the priority list of things for all of us to work on and make sure this happens. That's, I think, what we have. It'll take the time it'll take.
Okay.
Sorry, management.
One more
Yes,
thing.
Peter.
I was looking at this morning. I pasted it in the chat. And you tell me if this is also something that we should look into. This was about sale, and Adam was working on that, but he's on PTO this week, and I wonder if right now things are working with sale operator.
So the latest sale should be prioritized as well. However, that's not impacting the API. So it
Right.
doesn't mean that we have to go V1 with the API, but we should get that in place as soon as possible. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Yes, it's our scope for API.
Yeah, but ties back into the QE sort of friendliness that we may want to give or not. But yeah.
So last time I checked with Adam, that was waiting on auth in WASM landing, which I assume is now landed. So that's free to go. But I didn't realize that Adam was out. So is he out for a long time, Thomas?
Or he's back next Wednesday. So
okay, so we probably want someone to pick that up then.
So no, the changes of auth and the config stuff are not in the. Though arguably that's fine because we don't need those changes in to merge that. So I think you're correct.
Can you just ping me on that, Thomas? Just assign it to me and I'll see if I can figure out where and how that can happen.
Correct. I can help you with that. If you need any help or anything, let me know.
Okay, thanks, Lucy.
Yeah, I've been talking with Adam several times about this sale operator installed using the Helm chart. We were waiting for the Helm chart for a long time. It happened last, I will say, first release of the sale operator 0.1.0. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with all the details, but yeah, I can truly help.
Thanks, Kuski.
And Alex, in that original list you typed out there, anything that we should talk about further, like that stands out as like particularly risky, or it's all kind of okay-ish, just not finished?
Well, in my books, it's kind of all okay. But yeah, I also realized there is very suboptimal things that we do, right? But I sort of came to peace with that. So obviously, like, including from an API perspective, right? So if you click it, like the rate limit policy changes, if you open that quickly, I think this highlights neatly, because in the auth config, it's a bit of a shit show to see. Right? So if you look at that, I think that shows like how things are suboptimal. Like the when with the predicate, the counters with the expression. It's like, why do we do this? Like it's a bit redundant. In the auth config and in the auth policy, because the type like leak, I ask a question there because there I must say I'm a bit stupid. I don't know if we can easily take things away from the auth config types when we import it inside the auth policy types. I don't think this is easily feasible. It is feasible because it's just handling types. But I think it's a whole lot more code monkeying. That would be a nice way to make things look a whole lot better in both. Like in all of our policies, right? Because what I say there, that the idea is to have things like look alike, right? When you look at an auth policy and a rate limit policy, I think they should look alike. So the when stuff, for instance, that gets literally copy pastable in this case, right? From one auth policy, from one policy to another, which I think is good. The pattern looks the same. But bunch of that is dictated by the auth config that wants to keep backwards compatibility, right? If we say we move that all in the policy and properly abstract it, then we can make things quote unquote lighter weight, right? Which could inform some of the questions in the auth config itself then as well, by the way. So yeah. But in the meantime, I'm like, if that's what we go for, like YAML engineers should earn their pay and they'll just be typing more characters.
Yeah, do you need those keys in front, do you think, Alex? Like, or could you just have an array of expressions?
Can you be really precise in like
So
what you're saying? Because yeah.
So it says like predicate and then auth identity.group.
Yeah.
Like, could you remove the predicate piece?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's redundant.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I could, and there absolutely could, but I cannot in the auth config. And because we let the types from the auth config, that's what we reuse in the auth policy. Like I need to stick to that quote unquote format, right? That layout.
Right.
Other than I do all the juggling myself in the rate limit policy, in the auth policy to transform it. But then I can't simply, I need data mappers, right? So it's literally is a, Kubernetes development is a bit like web development, right? You take JSON and you shove it inside a database. Well, that's what we do there. Yeah. Partial massage, data massage is what we do.
Yeah.
So we could do that, but it's more work, right? So somebody has to do that work.
I don't hate, personally, I don't hate this. It's just like, maybe I picked it up subliminally from what you were saying, but it just jumped out to me as like, do we actually need that? But I don't think it's
driven by implementation details is the
right.
answer you sadly have to hear. No, we don't need it. Ideally, I think it wouldn't be there. But even that's literally arguable, right? You could say when predicate, no, I know this thing is to evaluate to a Boolean value, right? So it actually provides some expressiveness, right? Counters, expression, like maybe you don't want expression there. That's informed by the choice that I made in the auth config. You could say counter value, and then now because what you have is whatever this expression resolves to, well, evaluates to, right? That's what keys your counters. But so arguably it provides some clarity about what's going on, possibly not. Sorry, Guy.
No problem. I just wanted to say that avoiding those keywords for a predicate expression and go straight to the actual expression there. And you know exactly how big the effort is, to get that done. It's not, I mean, huge. It's totally doable. Since we're gonna have to touch this anyway, right? So I'm doing that something similar to that or analogous to that right now, in order to port, the changes we need from the example in the post machinery into the actual thing in the quadrant operator right now, right? Where sometimes I chose redefining the types as a quadrant type, and it started importing from Altair at the lower level rather than at the higher level. This is exactly the same thing we're talking about here. So instead of importing the type that defines the when, for example, there, right, at the level of when, we define when inside of the quadrant operator, and we import something lower than that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. See what has to be done, and I'm like, I'd be fine. Like that's a bit why I'm saying this. Like it's a comment I put below, right? To raise the question, right? So what is it we want to do?
Yeah, I guess the only question is whether we want to support those two ways of representing predicates. The one in Excel simultaneously to the one that we have today, or we want to completely remove the one that we have today. Because if we want the latter, then I would say, let's make the API as user-friendly as possible and get rid of those keywords.
My answer to your question is going to be in two phases. One, yes, I think we want the latter generally. This is why I said, can we get rid of the GJs and stuff, in parentheses in the list there? And when I say that, what I mean is getting rid of the whatever it's called, pattern condition.
Wait. So I need to interrupt you with that. Get rid of the GJs and stuff where?
In there. Oh, yeah.
In the
I
auth
don't care about
policy.
auth config. Like I'm talking about our policies.
Right.
So that's why
the auth policy knows nothing about GJs, and you know that, right?
Well, it does.
No, it doesn't, because in the end, it's just a string that it moves to the auth config.
Yeah. Okay. But there you
So
go.
if you
it
move,
does.
but it doesn't. That's my point. Because if you you get to choose where you move that from where to where, right?
Okay, I don't agree with that, but okay, then let's step one step up, because what we're really talking about, the reason there is predicate there for people who don't know is because there could be other things there. Not there, by the way, that's not what I had planned to do, right? In the case of the rate limit policy, I was planning on supporting cell period. So the other stuff goes away. That's what I would do. How we do this, we can do this phased if we want, that's fine, but like I would take it away. So so that's why that's there. So the thing that's there is then a 3/ it's a nenum type, like in the proper sense of the word, right? I forgot what the actual computer science term is, but that thing, right? So that says it's either a thing that references a name thing, or, and including in the case of rate limiting policy, it becomes this pattern expression thing that is go find the value there. That's the operator that you want to use, and that's the value against which you want to evaluate it, right? And this is where there is some GJSON support in the auth stuff, and this is where Guy is correct. It's not explicit in the API, but it's implicit, which in my book is even worse. Because now people could have written a string, we can parse the string, but you would change its semantic. I think that's very bad. So I would take it away. That's what I would do. And this is why predicate is there, because of the auth config and so forth. Just to explain. Because, well, I know you know, Guy, but others may not know. Guy, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, currently we have a field called selector, right? Which is not full replacement for predicate, rather it's just a part of what you see there in a predicate. In fact, a predicate can be way more complex than that, and it combines not only selector, but the other two fields that usually go along with the selector, right? Operator and value, right? But thinking on selector, we have selector as a field that clearly communicates to the user the kind of thing you can put there, right? Today, in an auth policy, whenever you see selector, you know you can use any of the GJs and stuff, right? If we do not support selector, if we remove the word selector, right, I think it's implied that you no longer should expect the same value to be accepted, right? So I think that's what I'm trying to say. So if we decide not to support the old way of representing conditions with selector and other fields, that means those fields will all go away, right? We won't have selector, operator, and value anymore. The only thing we would have is predicate, right? And if that's the only thing we have, except for one more, because you rightfully mentioned three things, right? The tuple, selector, operator, and value, now predicates, but we also have the named thing, right? The reference thing. So those two ones that I mentioned first, the tuple and predicates, they are for the same thing. So they are completely redundant, right? So it's either one or the other. Whereas the third thing, which is the reference to a named set of patterns, right, stored at the top level of the auth config, that we need to decide if we want to keep supporting. If it makes sense, keep supporting if cell is the only way to representing predicates. If we decide that we do not need that, right, then I would say let's get rid of predicates and it's only a cell expression there, right, and keep the API as simple as possible. User will know that they cannot reuse any older GJSON based selector because there is no selector anymore to put that same string, right? But if you say that we want to keep named fields, named patterns, then we still need something to differentiate between the actual predicate and the reference.
We don't. And the trick is that you could represent them as functions in cell. It could become functions, you know, foobar, parentheses, like you define foobar colon expression, right?
Interesting.
Then in the cell expression, you now call foobar. So you're calling that function. And then I wouldn't even call it name, right? I would literally call it functions. And then you define them by name and you can reference them by name because now they become composable as well, which is much nicer than a name thing in my books again, but like it's more powerful, right?
Interesting. But would that affect the way you represent the named patterns? I mean, not how you use them, but the way you represent them.
The way you represent them.
Yes, currently it's a map of a name to a list of patterns, right?
Exactly those. So which means they're predicates, right? In this case, they can become like full-blown expression. That's the last line that you see on this example there, right? What this says expression, it evaluates this expression to whatever source.remote address represents. So this thing could be a full-blown object, right? Like something that has further fields and so forth. So now you could reference a function and say foobar, close, open, close, paren, dot my member, dot starts with, you know, and keep on going. I'm not sure if that thing makes sense, like without typing. But so I would make it so that they really say that, right? So they wouldn't be named patterns. They would be like, I would call them functions in that case, you know, like declare them as functions.
I get it.
That are a function are themselves an expression, not a predicate in that case. They're where a predicate is a subtype of an expression because a predicate is an expression that returns a Boolean value always, in case it wasn't clear. So that's what I would do. It's part of the thing that I pinged you on my cell thing with the name stuff, actually. That's now we're discussing it. That's stuff I had in mind, but I didn't want to spoil it.
at the level of the quadrant operator today, we don't do much on validating the references, right, in the predicates. Do you think we should do, and do you think it's still feasible to do if we represent them as cell functions?
Oh yeah. It's like I would even argue it's much simpler. But yeah, because they all become first class citizens, and validating anything in that case, right, is simpler, because now what you do is you don't reference the name back that they exist. What you do is you validate that an expression makes sense wherever it is. Whether that expression makes sense or not is based on the context. I don't want to go into too much detail, but in this case, this context would be enriched with that function. In the case that function is in there, the context would tell you, well, I can't evaluate that thing because it referenced something that I don't know about. And that something I don't know about could be your source, like a root binding, as I call them. You know, it could be a function, it could be whatever in this case. You know, it becomes sort of, this is why I say it's simpler. It's this one concept that validates the evaluation of an expression. So where am I heading with this? So should we do all this? Well, you know my take. Yes, I think we should do all this. But back to what we were saying before, I think that's going to be for a subsequent release, where it's going to make the user experience so much nicer, because now all of a sudden, you know, like a policy that may merge into multiple things, like be split, merge, or whatever, right? We don't wait until that thing happens to figure out obviously broken things. We'll know as soon as the object appears in the state of the world thing, right? So yeah, but I don't see that happening in the next few weeks by any means. It's quite some work, but it becomes feasible, and that I think is the key, because it's addition, right? We make the experience better.
So I want to kind of conclude this
Yeah.
conversation. Am I right to understand that your proposal here is the doable one for this 1.0 API? Or we don't even...
There is the easiest one implemented, right? Because of the side effects, right? At the rate limit policy, nobody cares, because actually we can do whatever we want and it's just going to work. But because of what I said there, right, it should feel similar. It's based on what I've done and proposing for cell inside auth, right? So if we go ways that Guy just mentioned, right, whereas let's be, and I'm going to be very honest, that's the thing that should be done, right? I think the proper thing to do is have the mapper types inside the quadrant operator and not leak the auth config types directly in, right? I believe that's the right thing to do. But I also want to be pragmatic about this, you know, like we're all working hard towards this thing. It's only so hard like you can work. So I believe, yes, I believe the proper thing is, you know what deadlines are, an imagination, like a made up thing, screw it and do the proper thing. Yeah, do all the mapping, proper mapping, get rid of expression, get rid of predicate, and do things properly. That's, yeah, but anybody that's talked to me more than 5 minutes know that would have been my answer.
Yeah, but still, what I don't understand is, what does that mean? Like we also want to finish something like...
This is why I'm proposing this.
Right. Okay. I understood. Okay.
Suboptimal, cool, but feasible in the shortest amount of time.
Right. Might be valuable to also have an issue that has the proposal for how they ideally look, like our dream structure. Well, to know that where we are working towards.
No, we cannot work towards that then. That's the bad news. If you do that, then you cannot go to the ideal world afterwards. That's a one-way street.
Unless you go V2.
Yeah, unless you do a V2. But
okay,
yeah, you really want to plan for V2 when you don't have V1 out?
No.
Wow, that's
I'm
harsh.
just saying it's possible.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so here's a crazy question then. How much, like, would like your ideal language be feasible for the end of the last iteration before 1.0? And how much are we screwing QE if we do that?
Thomas, Like we have so many things converging at this point.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm already concerned that we're not going to make that timeline with
Yeah.
what's planned.
Sure. I'm just asking.
But the answer is we won't make it.
I love how you're tempting me to like stand up to my beliefs and like deadlines are a made up thing. No, I'm with Craig on this. Like there's too many moving parts at this stage. I wouldn't add yet another one. And it's stacking up. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying, but if it would be, and sorry, I'm gonna say state of the world, but don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming them at all with those things. But the example that Guy took, right, where I need to change this thing to sort of make it work so that it becomes sensible, right? If we do what I'm thinking we should really do, it's more ripple effects, right? It's a gift that keeps on giving. And so then, yeah, we're boxing ourselves in the corner, right? So I wouldn't do it. Other than you tell me, yeah, we have another 2 months. I'm like, yeah, sure, do it.
This is a classic case, though, of when you design the system, it tells you how you should design the system, right? Like, in a perfect world, it would be first iteration, and we would learn, oh, this is how we should design the system. But it's not a perfect world, and we can't design a perfect system.
Well, talk for yourself, man. Sorry, Guy.
It is a good moment to highlight the things that we would be giving up on if we do not do this. Because I remember, man, the whole reason why we want Cell in the first place. I'm looking at you, Alex. But I can also mention some of the examples that we brought to this very same meeting in the past, right? Things such as building conditions based on values like timestamps, right? Or even numeric values in general. There's very little value in the current selectors and operators we support for those types of data.
Yeah, but I'm confused by what you're saying. Like, we're not giving anything away here, right? That you get all this with Cell being introduced.
Sorry. Now I'm almost challenging, our capacity to get Cell in before V1 at all. Not only that tiny change of getting rid of the things that are redundant, but what I'm looking in this example, to me, it already looks enough of a change, unless somebody starts working on this right now, and I would wait for the old part of the system of the word to finish to even start tackling this.
Sorry, what is this? I'm a bit lost about.
This that you call V1 Beta 4.
Yeah,
We don't have this in right now.
No.
Right? Right. So right now, the only way to represent conditions and as well as the counters in the rate limit policy is based on the current selectors. Right?
Well, yeah, but okay. So let's forget this thing, right? You're talking about auth. So there is a proposal to have Cell in all the types that leak into the auth policy. So technically, as soon as this PR is agreed on and can be merged, it's a matter of flipping the thing you import inside the auth policy.
It's not only that, right? We also need to change how we generate that arguably that's internal, the WAS machine, but that's not true. We need to merge the one in Autorino, right? Which is currently ready for review, I want to say. Then we need to finish the work that I'm doing for section aim and merge strategy, which means bringing alt into the state of the world reconciliation thing. And then we need to start working on extending the API either as V1 Beta 3 or V1 Beta 4 to add Cell to it, right? So there are at least 3 things that need to happen in order, even only to get Cell in the alt policy.
Yeah,
and now you're already talking about how to bring them also to the rate limit policy, obviously, because you want those 2 APIs to look similar.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is that there are 3 to 4 different things that need to happen in sequence,
Yeah.
right? So,
Well, not in
is it
sequence, but
doable?
yeah.
No, I do believe that they need to happen in sequence.
Well, not the rate limit policy, right? I can do it in parallel, but whatever.
Okay, I'm gonna cut this off because I want to give Egoski the time to do his demo.
Okay.
Interesting, but and open-ended kind of. So
Yeah.
we should.
Like
Yeah.
that's the problem at this
Yes.
stage.
Well, we're working away on things, and yeah, I don't think we should wait further than the end or than this week to have something tagged again, or to have a build of something. I think, but we can talk outside of this meeting. Eguski, you want to make us happy?
Actually, there is another point I wanted to raise
No, you
before
cannot do
going
this. You
to.
cannot do this. Sure, go.
I mean, it's in the agenda. Last minute, but well, it should be quick. I mean, the question is, do we want to cut or release Quadrant V012 tomorrow? Well, let me rephrase. Should I cut or release tomorrow of V012?
Oh, okay. Here's
It's
what
not a
I
matter
think.
of wanting or not wanting. It's
No,
are
no,
we
no.
going
It's
to do
about one
this or
thing.
not?
It's about one thing. So, no, I don't think we want to because it has no point. Right? I think we should cut a release prior to 4 weeks from now. Yes. I think we should do it as soon as we can. And I still believe it should include all of the above. So that's my heuristic for when that release should be cut.
That's the final decision.
No,
I want
that's
to know
our
because
opinion.
tomorrow I need to start typing like a monkey.
No,
No. Don't
No.
do nothing tomorrow.
there's
Well, no,
point.
do work, but not on a
Okay.
release.
Correct.
I was agreeing with Alex. I don't think we should.
Okay. Decided. Demo time, right? You're muted, Tegus.
Yeah, sorry. Let me take over the screen sharing. Okay, this is going to be a quick one. Some context, and the demo is in 1 minute. I would like to introduce the first Quadrant custom well-known attribute. Let me first describe a little bit what is well-known attribute, and then I'll go to the meaning of the new custom well-known attribute, the source remote address. I guess it's big enough. So, well-known attribute. It's been a word being mentioned a lot of times in the past 40 minutes. Those are references that can be used in either the predicates. I think I have something I can show. I think it's this one. Yeah, it's something we can use in our configuration to as a predicate, as a when condition. So we can say something we reference needs to be equal or not equal to a value, or we can use in the relimit for the relimiting use case, we can use as a qualified variable, meaning that wherever is the value of that, I want to counter for each different value for that attribute, for the reference value. So there are attributes, well-known attributes that Envoy provides to us for different use cases or for different scopes. For one example would be request path. It's the first one. You can use the request path in our policies, and the request path is the reference to the obviously the path of the request of the incoming request. So you can use that as for conditions, or you can use that as a qualified variable. So you can have, let's say, a counter for each request path, if that makes any sense, but it is what it is. So Envoy provides some of them we can use. So that's regarding the I'm sorry, yeah, that's regarding the well-known attributes. So Kuadrant is introducing a new well-known attribute that is not in the Envoy list, which is called source remote address. And what is the motivation? When it's already years ago, when we move from the Envoy's rate limiting, when we move away from Envoy's rate limiting filter and we replace by our WASM, we lost one nice feature or capability, which is getting the remote address. This is the documentation for the rate limiting filter and the remote address. It's basically what it says. It's a reference to the trusted address from X forwarded for header. In short, is the client address. I don't want to go into much detail. In 1 minute, let me show you what it is more or less. The X forwarded for header is being used to account for the hops in a given path. So let's say the envoy, our envoy is the server. We can know which is the source address. And so we can add rules, conditions, predicates based on that source address. This is a very, this is a fundamental capability being used by many of ops guys when deploying in production, system in productions, adding rules based on the source address. Not going into much detail, but what it counts here is that Envoy defines a way to compute the trusted address. And the good news is that our Envoy implementation for Kuadrant relies on that computation. We don't do that. We rely on Envoy to do that for us. We read that value and we expose that value to be used from our policies. If you want to learn more about this, for instance, this reading, this article, very illustrative, is linked in the issue for this new well-known attribute. So we call source remote address. Other new well-known attributes are coming, are on the way, starting with auth, blah, blah, but this is the first one. So let's go to the, so yeah, having this new well-known attribute, we can use in this way. By the way, this structure, this schema is outdated since this morning. This morning, we merged a PR that changes this structure, but it doesn't matter. For what it's worth, for what it's worth, I can still use it because the demo was prepared already. I didn't have time to change this. So this well-known attribute can be used, as I said, as condition. Let's say I don't want to relimit when the source address is blah, blah, blah. or can be used as a qualified variable. I want to rate limit per IP address. And this is what the demo goes about. I'm going to define a policy like this, exactly like that. So I'm going to run few users. Each user, each consumer will have a different source IP address, and one of them will have the special one. So the special one, according to this policy, shouldn't be rate limiting, while the others should be rate limiting. And one thing important to note is that each one will have its own counter. It's not a short counter. So let's go to the example. Oops, sorry. So Alice, in the right side, I'm going to show counters in limiter. Well, the environment is being running behind the scenes. It's a regular development environment of Kuadrant. Nah, not very regular, to be honest. It's limitador, envoy, and the wasm. Only those three elements being running. We don't need all the stuff, all the full Kuadrant architecture being deployed. So on the right side, we'll be looking at the limitador counters. Right now, there is none, the empty list. Those three windows, the top one, we will call it Alice. The middle one, we will call it Bob. And the bottom, we'll call it Charlie. Charlie is a user that comes from a trusted network, from or let's call it internal network, so we don't want to rate limit. The IP address will be 50,001. So we don't want Charlie to be rate limited because it comes from an internal network. This is a use case. While Bob and Alice, they come from external, they have their own API. Alice starts with 40 and Bob starts with 30. The policy is, let me check. I think it's no, I think it's in here. It's in here. Yeah, the policy is this. Well, the limits is 2 requests allowed every 10 seconds for each source IP address. So let's see this running. Not this one, but sorry, this one. Let's start with Alice. We see 2 requests being accepted every 10 seconds. Needless to say that this is running 1 request per second, as usual in my demos. We see one counter, which is for the remote address 40. Expires in seconds. You see that it's expiring. It's already been rate limited. Now I'll start Bob. So we get the second counter for Bob. For Bob is 30. So it's this one. For Alice, this one. And now let's start Charlie from internal trusted network. We don't want rate limiting. And there is no counter for Charlie, and Charlie is not being rate limited, while the others are being rate limited. So yeah, that's because we can use this new well-known attribute called sorry, where are you? Not here. Somewhere I lost my thing. Yeah, here. It's called source remote address in this particular way. And that's all. Any questions?
3 minutes left. Thank you, Agus. Well, I have one. What is then source dot address? What does that give you? Like just the last one that I passed through, or what's the difference?
Sorry, what's source?
Source dot
Again?
address, I guess, also exists, right? Like we added remote address, but we already have address.
Yes.
What does address
Yes,
give you?
it's in the Envoy attributes.
Mhm.
Envoy attributes.
Yeah, I don't care where it is. I want to know what would I get from it? What's the IP address that I get?
Source dot address. It's something that
The closest.
Envoy provides. Okay,
Yeah.
and for Envoy, it's applies the same computation for the trusted address.
Yeah, but if it would be
To
hopping, it would
answer
be the
your
last hop.
question,
Yeah.
yeah, let me answer your question, Thomas. Like it will actually have the full blown what's called an address, and that's the tuple of the IP and the port.
And the
So
port.
what you would have in there is 127.0.0.1:6704, which is the source port that's connecting to you.
And that's only when the trusted address is not read from the X forwarded for header. When the trusted address is read from the X forwarded for header, you don't have the port, so the port is :0. It's 0. This is how Envoy works.
Any last question? Because we're out of time, basically. I think so. Okay.
I'm reading
Sorry,
now.
Thomas.
We will support multiple values. Multiple values, yes. That's, I mean, for in the existing, it's right now we do, but we are going to change that. But with cell expression, you can add expressions like this or this or this or this, something like that.
Okay, one last thing.
Yeah, I don't know if we have done that already, but two follow-up things to do after this one is probably also update the list of well-known attributes that we have currently in the Kuadrant website, right? I think that goes in the RFC in the architecture repo. And another one, if it's possible, and I think it is, the equivalent in Authorino as well, because I think Authorino probably suffers from the same problem, even though you have other ways to parse the value in Authorino today. It would be nice to have the same attribute available there as well.
Not sure we can do that. I need to investigate because the computation of so-called trust address is being done by Envoy, and Envoy exposes that. And that computation follows some algorithm, which is very well explained in one of the linked documents in the issue. And depends on the configuration of Envoy itself. For instance, the number of trusted hubs. You are an Envoy, you deploy your Envoy maintainer, and you know that you have in front of you 2 trusted proxies. So you know that those 2 trusted proxies provide valid trusted address in the X forwarded for header. Roy can explain far better than me, but it depends on the configuration of Envoy. So implementing on Authorino, it's something we need to investigate and see how we can do. Not saying no, but I don't see how right now.
Well, yeah, quickly adding on this. Yeah, because I think it's about data flow. That's the way that I think we should think about this, right? So all this data that Authorino uses comes from the request made by the WASM shim. So very obviously the WASM shim can resolve that because that's what this does. And now you need to find a way to send that data along and extend it in like over the wire protocol. That's actually pretty easy, ugly, but easily done.
Sorry, Alex. Via the WAS module, I kind of take it as granted that we can do it. I was actually thinking more along the lines of what Guski understood, which is how if we could even extract that from the check requests we get on integration directly from the proxy without the WAS module.
There is Envoy, very politely adds header to the request with the trusted client address. So maybe that could be the source. That was my investigation will start, but because that header can be used in subsequent hubs when things get to internal hubs, which is also a use case being covered by the computation.
I'll have to educate myself more about the intricacies and then how hard it is to implement. I really do not know. I'm bringing this up because I think this is the very first well-known attribute that we have that if we just add that, and it's going to be the first one that it's not automatically available in Authorino, right? We will need to do the work to make it show up there. And if it's not possible to do it for external auth integration, then it becomes a Kuadrant only thing, something that we can only deliver via WAS module integration. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, with that, we proved that deadlines are indeed fabrications of our mind, because we're 4 minutes past the hour and we're still alive. Thank you, everybody. If anybody wants to lead the next call, let me know. You're welcome to. Let's skip the rest of this call and leave it here. And thank you for participating. See you next week. Bye.